Good evening, folks. Welcome to another edition of the CitizenWolf audio podcast. This is episode 6 you're currently listening to. I did have to double check with Fox over here because I couldn't remember what episode it was. So that's a great start, isn't it? Thank you, everybody. Yeah, so he's my special guest this week. Thank you, everybody, for all the well wishes and support over the last couple of weeks. I have been quite unwell, and so has Fox as well. So we've had to put our plans on hold, but now we've actually managed to get something together. So welcome to the show, Fox. How's it going?
I'm doing pretty good, Wolf. I'm glad to be on here.
It was quite last minute. I asked Fox to be on the show, and I didn't expect him to say yes. So thank you very much once again for coming on the show. And I'll be interrogating him for the next hour and a half, I think.
No, that's perfect. I'm very honored to be here. It's a very fun experience. I've always kind of wanted to be part of a podcast, so thank you very much for the invitation.
No problem. Have you ever done a podcast before, by the way? Is this the first time?
I did do one with a couple of friends once, but we never actually continued doing more episodes. So everybody just sort of had different work times. So we just did one episode, and from there we just sort of just pushed it to the side, and then just never got back to it.
I think that's the trouble with a lot of podcasts, isn't it? Like, you have great ideas, and then it's just finding the
schedule more than anything.
Especially if people are in different time zones. Was that the case for your podcast, was it?
No, it was with some in real life friends, but at the time we all had different work hours, so it actually scheduling something together was very difficult. So we only managed to do one episode, and then we just never managed to do it again.
So it's more of a recording than a podcast.
Yeah, it was more of a we did it live and then just I guess uploaded it as a podcast episode. We were young, naive, just doing it for fun.
It's one of those things, isn't it? You got an idea, and just things just get in the way, isn't it? Which is a bit of a shame. But there you go. But hopefully, you'll have a good time on this podcast. We've got a bunch of questions and stuff, and we've also got a few questions from the audience, which is pretty cool. We'll be talking about, of course, for the people who haven't listened to this podcast before. This is basically a place where I'll try and get some artists on to talk about their experiences of making art, be it 3D, 2D, or anything in between. So, of course, so introduce yourself. What sort of art do you do? You're a 3D artist. How did you get involved with that?
All right. Well, I started my journey with making 3D art all the way back in 2016. I didn't actually start with MLP. I started with FNAF characters, believe it or not.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and I started obviously with Source Filmmaker. And the way I got into it, I had already used Source Filmmaker here and there for, I'll call them videos to be generous, more just messing around. And eventually one day I was on e621.net. And I was looking at the FNAF section, and I came across a 3D render of Foxy. I'm like, yo, this model looks really cool. And I saw it, I'm like, oh, somebody probably sculpted this and made it themselves. But then I saw the tags. It said Source Filmmaker. I'm like, yo, does that mean this model is available to download? So I just looked around for it, didn't have to look that far. It was on SFM Lab. I downloaded it, and that's pretty much how I started my journey into making loots. I started out with FNAF stuff. I didn't actually do any MLP related content until a year later when I discovered the Soria model, the famous Soria head hacking model. My first image with it was a rarity image. It was shitty. I'm not gonna lie. I was terrible with SFM, all throughout my first 2 years with it. I'm not that I'm the best or anything right now, but it was horrible. And I think I only did 1 or 2 models with the Soria head hacking for a while. I mainly just stuck to whatever model I found on SFM Lab that caught my fancy. I don't really think it was up until the release of Next Gen that I really focused into making 3D art more frequently, because back then I just sort of did every now and then when I got an idea. It wasn't up until Next Gen that I really said yo, I want to kind of dedicate myself to be a 3D artist, really put the time and energy into making interesting pieces of art.
How did you learn Source Filmmaker? Did you teach that to use the software yourself, or did you have like someone to help you, or how did you come into using Source Filmmaker?
My first time I got into like really Source Filmmaker, I did try and follow the Valve made tutorials they uploaded to YouTube that just sort of go over like the basics of how like the whole interface and all that works. I saw them, not completely. I literally just saw them up until the point to where I was like, okay, so that's how this works, and that's how I move the viewport. That's how I move the model. That's how I import the maps. Uh, I a lot of my workflow was just like trial and error and just messing around with the program, seeing what each option did, seeing what worked. It wasn't really until I got to like into the whole like Soria head hacking that I had to like learn how to use like change textures, how to like actually like change the scale of models and bones and all that. Most of it was just like, I got a couple of minutes free to myself. Let me open up SFM and see what I can do.
I always envy people who manage to use Source Filmmaker because I couldn't. I just didn't know where to start with it. Maybe I guess that's why I skipped over that towards Blender. It's interesting with Source Filmmaker. It wasn't really initially designed for artwork, was it? It was more for Valve's testing of their own their assets and their engine, really, wasn't it? But like it's sort of the artist community sort of made it like sort of what's the word, like shoehorned it to make their own artwork, I suppose.
Yeah, they worked around like what the program was supposed to call it, because it is called Filmmaker. Like it's got the word film in it, so like obviously the intended purpose is that you'll make films with all that. But I guess it really like came down to finding out that you could like export individual frames where people are like, hey, you can like actually use this to make artwork. It's not just limited to films and all that. I think that's like part of the magic where it's like, oh, you can actually just export a single frame and like not do a film. Because I for the longest time thought like, oh, that's only for filmmaking. So like my first few projects were always focused on making animations because I thought that's like the only use you could give it. Because like it's not one of the export options is like export as poster or something, but I never gave it much attention. I'm like, that's just probably for like making thumbnails or something. It wasn't until like I was actually getting into the whole like artist scene that I learned all these like little nitty gritty tips and tricks about it.
Like looking at like how the interface is, it's just like I get a cold sweat looking at it, like how people. How do you work that thing? Like I just couldn't. When as I said, I've said this before countless times already in the podcast, of course. Like, because I've skipped. I just didn't know what to do with Source Filmmaker, so I sort of skipped it myself. But looking how the interface is, it's very text based and everything's all hidden within sub menus and all sorts of things. It's so how did you? I just don't know how people managed to learn how to use it. I'm sort of jealous in that sort of regard.
For me, like the first time I opened it, it was like the most intimidating thing I had ever worked with, because like up until that point I came more of a video making background and like basic image editing and all that from Photoshop, but to like actually open up like a 3D program and all that, it was very intimidating. I'm like, what do any of these options mean? What are they referring to? Like I think the very first thing that obviously I managed to do was import a map and import just like a basic TF2 model. But then I didn't know how to actually manipulate the camera view, so I was just stuck like working with like the mid body of the character because I couldn't pan the camera or anything. And I very hastily found out how to move the bones because of drop down menus. I'm like, what do all these bones mean? What do all these sliders do? It was very, very intimidating at first. And that's only like importing the character. When you get to like lighting and all that, that's where like it also gets like very intimidating and stuff.
Have you used any other 3D modeling software or anything like that before SFM, or was it the first foray into 3D artwork?
I had back in like let's see, I got into SFM in 2016. I had downloaded like around 2013, around 2014, Blender, which was
A very old version of it. Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
like one of the 2.7 versions, I believe, or like even older. I don't know what revision they were in. I remember opening Blender and just seeing that like first the default cube and all that. I was like, yeah, no, this ain't gonna work. So that was like I only had like 5 minutes experience before that with like any sort of 3D program, and it was very intimidating. But at the time, I knew it was something I wanted to do because I was like, I want to get into like 3D art because I can't draw to save my life. So it's like 3D for some reason in my mind sounded a lot easier. So I'm like, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna force myself to learn it, no matter how scared I am. Like the worst thing that can happen is that I just render out something that doesn't look good. And I just learned from it. And at the time, I remember, like, obviously, there wasn't that many good SFM tutorials. There were a few here and there, but there wasn't that many outside of like the Valve ones. They got into like the real nitty gritty of it.
Yeah,
To,
that's a big problem I've come across. Yeah,
yeah,
limited resources.
yeah, which is probably like one of the things that's been pushing me to like move away more from SFM is that like resources. Like whenever I wanted to do a very specific thing, it was either hard, like nearly impossible, or impossible to find that exact tutorial that I needed to achieve a certain effect or do a certain thing.
With Blender, it's only in very recent years it's become a lot more accessible, if you like, especially since probably not since after 2.8 was the last big update. Now it's on 3.0, but 2.8 onwards was the point where it sort of became a lot more accessible, especially for beginners and stuff like that. And with going back to, I think the very first 3D program I used was like a program called Bryce. I don't know whether you've come across that before. Like it was like Bryce 3 or 4, I think it was. I think it was mainly for like mountains and landscapes and things. And also used Daz Studio. I think that still exists, by the way, Daz Studio.
Yeah, I think it's still around, but never heard of Bryce and Daz Studio. I think maybe once I downloaded it, but at the time my computer couldn't like run it for anything.
Yeah, I think I had the same issue. Like I only had like a really crappy laptop that couldn't run Solitaire half the time, if you were lucky. Like so, trying to run anything more strenuous than that was a bit of a problem. But your Daz Studio still exists, I think, but I haven't really used it myself lately. Blender. When you started using Blender, 2.8 was when the
when it like the interface changed or something. I don't know. It just seemed a lot friendlier, a lot more convenient.
And a lot more, the community seemed a lot more willing to teach everybody else, a lot more resources to learn from as well.
Yeah. I've only been using Blender like consistently since like December, but in these like couple of months, I can tell you right now, it is so much better to work with because like first of all, there's a lot of things you can do obviously in Blender that you can't do in Source. And if you want to achieve a certain look, a certain effect, if you want to do something, it's super easy to find like a tutorial online, and like most of the time it's a lot easier than what you're probably imagining in your head. So that's something I like a lot.
So you're finding the transition, the jump over to Blender, like a lot more pleasant than you expected.
Yeah, like I remember opening like Blender up again when I was like decided like, okay, I want to transition over to Blender, because it makes images, look prettier. You can do a lot more things. And I remember opening up, I believe in December, the like current version was still like 2.93 or something. And I was surprised how different it was, because like I hadn't used Blender at that time for like almost like 7 years or so, or a little bit more. I'm like, this looks way different. I still didn't know a lot of things, but it literally took like just looking up how to move around the viewport, and the rest was just like messing around with settings, a couple tutorials here and there, and I was up and running. Obviously, I'm still very new to it. There's a lot of things that maybe I'm doing that could be done in a lot easier ways or different ways, but I am very happy where I am right now. Don't get me wrong. I think focusing on Source Filmmaker for a couple of years there made it way easier than like jumping in headfirst into Blender directly. Because at least there's like a little bit of experience. I wouldn't say there's a lot that correlates between SFM and Blender. Because like I'll open up SFM now and then, and I'm so used to like how Blender works now that I'm like, oh wait, this doesn't work here, this doesn't work there. But just having that like basic understanding of how to work in a 3D space really helped out a lot to make that transition.
Yeah, definitely. So like, it's a case of tapping into that previous knowledge. Once you get to a certain stage in Blender, you can, oh, that's how you do it in Blender. Oh, that's what the axes mean and stuff like that.
Yeah, that helped out tremendously.
So what advice would you give people who've used SFM for a couple of years but thinking about learning Blender? What sort of advice would you give to those people to make the process easier? Is there anything that you would start off learning first of all?
I think obviously the first thing I would recommend is just like download Blender and just look at a tutorial on how to maneuver around the interface. Find out what maybe each parameter with each like little setting over here on the viewport, what they mean, how they work. Learn all the basic shortcuts, and just sort of try to ease into it. Like talking maybe to somebody that's coming from SFM that's like in the MLP scene using next gen. Once you actually like are able to understand how to move around in Blender, you'll find out it's very similar. Or at least to me, it felt like very similar working with next gen on SFM and working on it on Blender. Once I finally knew how to like move around, how to use the like rigs and all that. But yeah, just give it a time. Don't get intimidated. Just give it time. Learn a few tutorials. Don't even jump in straight into next gen. Maybe learn how to model a thing here or there. I think that would help out. Maybe learn how to set up a scene or something. Just little things, honestly. But yeah, definitely, if you're like just mildly interested in like trying out Blender, I 100% recommend it. Like it is fun to work with. I can say that it's frustrating in its own little ways, but it's also fun to work with.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's so much stuff that you can do with it. It's just like you're not gonna like get everything straight away, and of course it takes literally years to really get good with it, because the amount of features they're cramming into it, like with every incremental update as well as stuff. It's you probably only touch about like 20% of what Blender can do, probably most of the time anyway. Like you're probably only going to be putting scenes together and setting up lighting and things like that, but like you can do things like animation and programming and all the rest of it if you wanted to really go really deep into
like,
it.
Want to go bananas with it. It is amazing what this free software can like really accomplish.
Yeah, free.
Gotta mention that it's free. If anybody's like hesitating, it's free. You waste nothing trying it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So any tutorials do you recommend? Did you follow any particular tutorials yourself, or just did you try a bit of everything?
I tried a little bit of everything. The way I go about tutorials right now is like, if I have a certain idea in my head, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to make an image with this certain topic using my latest image as a reference, the one I did with Fluttershy with like with the bed sheets. I literally was like watching a whole different video. I don't even remember what I was watching. I think I was watching something like top 40 blended tutorials or whatever. And it showed one for like cloth simulation, and like an idea just came to mind. I'm like, that sounds like something I want to try out. So I looked up for like cloth simulation tutorials, followed that, made the image, and pretty much from there you'll get recommended different tutorials, and pretty much every single one you can learn a little bit about it, which is something I find really fun. Like there's so much to learn. There's so many things you can do, like even just for fun, not necessarily like stuff that you'll use in an image yourself, but maybe just to like try out. Something I've been trying out a lot at work are like water simulation and like soft body simulations. And just because it's fun, because I want to see like everything you can do in in Blender, because like you never know, that could inspire an idea for a future image or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I just like to like learn different things, like know how to do different things, because you never know when you're gonna need them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you're adding tools to the toolbox. Like, oh, I might need that later on.
Yeah,
That sort of thing.
yeah, like, oh, I might need this, or this might inspire an idea later, or I could use this for like a background object or something. I don't know. It's just a lot of different things. The one I am doing right now that I need to like get to is the famous donut tutorial.
Oh yeah. That's sort of like a rite of passage. I've did the version. I did it when 2.8 was like just new. So like I think he's updated that to version 3 now. I think.
Yeah,
BlenderGuru, I think.
Yeah, he brought out a version for 3.0, which is the one I'm following currently. I'm working on that at work. Like, thankfully at work we don't have that many people, so I can just sort of like mess around on the computers there.
No, just like getting paid to like learn Blender.
Yeah, basically,
indirectly.
It's been a couple of slow weeks, so like might as well use that time to like learn, which is a good thing, I guess. Like if you could take any time you got to like learn it, then that's a big plus.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For me, I sort of fell into it like with Blender, I suppose, because like back when this COVID stuff started back in 2020, that's when I started learning Blender.
Uh-huh.
I had literally 4 months of nothing to do something, and I thought like I'll learn Blender. A big trap that I recommend to people probably try to avoid is, I think some people get frustrated, I guess, like when they try to use Blender for the first time, especially even like if they're trying to move into it from like another piece of software such as Source Filmmaker or whatever. They think they could probably, some folk think they can like try and be good at it straight away when it's a completely different beast.
Oh yeah, it's like very different software.
You do have to relearn a lot of things. It's not a case of throwing away what you know already. That's not going to go anywhere. But it's a case of relearning like different workflows, if that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, like different situations. That happened with me. Like I thought for some reason like, oh, every 3D software is like it's standardized. So a lot of things I wanted to do, I did in Source Filmmaker. I wanted to do in Blender, and nope, they did very, very different things. They were shortcuts to other things, and they just scared me away right away.
Yeah, it's a case. It's like getting over the first few hurdles. I would say, yeah, that's probably the best advice I'd give to people is like if you want to do any kind of Blender artwork, but learn the fundamentals and the basics first of all. Like do the BlenderGuru tutorial is a very good one to use. Maybe if you're a bit strapped for time, that's maybe not one I'd recommend personally, because it's very comprehensive, it's very good, but if you don't have a lot of time on your hands, you might want to watch like a shorter one or a shorter series if you like. But there's plenty of those that do the job as well. The CG Boost does a really good Apple Blender tutorial, and Grant Abbitt does a really good monster modeling tutorial as well, which covers a lot of really cool things you can, if you want to play around with modeling. Even a tiny bit of like modeling knowledge and stuff does go a long way, especially with Blender, I find.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think that's one of the best things about Blender. There's a lot of like bite-sized tutorials, so there's always time. You always have like the perfect video with like that lasts exactly how much free time you have to like learn something.
If I can, like in the show notes, I'll put a few links to like some of for people who want to learn Blender for the first time. I'll put some resources in the show notes, like particular ones that I recommend, and of course ones that Fox recommends as well. I'll put them in the description if you want to look into those a little bit more extracurricular activity, if you like. But are there any drawbacks with using Blender that you come across that you don't like, or maybe you struggle with at the moment?
Not really, I guess. The only drawback, thankfully, I can say it doesn't apply to me, would probably be like if you want to use the cycles renderer, it can be pretty demanding on your hardware. Like if you don't have the hardware to use it, it can maybe be a little bit frustrating because they will take longer to render and all that.
Yeah.
Maybe working with anything pertaining to like shading, the shading notes and all that could probably also be like a big drawback. I know I definitely get like a little bit frustrated whenever I'm trying to like get a certain look or something. It doesn't work. And I don't know. I can't really say. Like, nothing's really coming to mind. I've had a very pleasant experience, which I think is something that can be rarely said about Blender from what I've seen. And mainly because, like, whenever I have like the slightest inconvenience, I'll just search it up right away. I'm like, I don't want to waste time just figuring that out myself. I'll just go ahead and see what the problem is, and so I can get back up and running.
So it's basically just a case of, I think, like, if you're willing to put the time in to learn it, basically anybody can learn Blender.
Yeah, anybody can learn it. It's way more approachable, in my opinion, than Source Filmmaker. The thing with Source Filmmaker that also kind of made me want to like transition away from it was just how limited it is, like hardware wise. You can't really take advantage of your computer because it's only like using up to like 4 gigs of like RAM or cache and all that.
32-bit, isn't it? So it's limited by the memory.
Yeah, which if you got a pretty big library of like models and all that, you're pretty much screwed as soon as you open the model viewer. They'll pretty much just guarantee you're going to have your scene crash like any second. So
was that a common occurrence for you when making stuff with Source Filmmaker, or did you not manage that?
It was one of the things that just made me like kind of egged me to be like, move over to Blender. Of course, I don't know if like that's an occurrence with Blender. I've only had a crash on me like twice so far, but like compared to like the 2 or 3 times it would crash per image that I was making every single time, like, oh, this is truly hell. I'd even question my sanity. It's like, why am I doing this to myself? Is it worth it? Which is kind of like what demotivated me at times. Like, oh, this software, it's
yeah,
it is what it is, but it sucks when it's not doing so great.
Yeah. For me, it has, Blender can crash, but it tends to be very stable most of the time. But when Blender tends to crash for me when, like, well, because I've gone back to my older stuff where like I didn't really know how to use Blender. I was still learning the software at the time. Like, I'm doing some new renders. I don't know whether I've been uploading a few of the new renders, a lot of some of my old artwork. I've been messing around with it just for the just to mess around with it. But like simply because it crashes an awful lot when I try and render these particular batches, because like I put everything at max settings, which is stupid. So like I basically I made that scene, that Fluttershy and Rarity picture in the bedroom scene. I made that very early on when I was still learning Blender, but like that was on my older PC with half the RAM I've got now. So I basically had to double the RAM to 32 but because I exhausted the amount of memory that Blender had available, and like I didn't realize at the time. So I thought, why is this crashing all the time? And then like I looked at the memory usage at the bottom. You can turn that on. That's a useful feature. But like it was literally maxed even not in the full material view. Even like in the solid view, it was nearly practically maxed out on the RAM. So I had to double it to 32 because I was stupid with the textures. That's why.
Okay. It's
dumb. I put everything at 4K, which is stupid and overkill, and I put way too many things in the scene as well. So it's a learning process, but like you learn as you go, I think. But like Blender, 90% of the time is behaves and is quite stable. But as I say, it still gets updates, but which is compared to Source Filmmaker, it doesn't. But
that poor program died in 2015.
Yes, it never left beta, did it? It's still
beta.
Technically a beta.
Yeah, you go to the store page and it's still like early access or whatever.
So it's a shame that if they could have done so much more with it if Valve wanted to, but I guess like maybe that they just weren't interested in exploring that anymore. I guess
they probably saw what people were doing with them. Like, yeah, we're not endorsing this.
Yeah, we're like, no, we're not. Yeah, saw the machinima people were making. Like, nah, we're not encouraging.
They went a page too far on Google and they found something they didn't want to see.
So, nah, we're not nothing to do with us now.
Actually, now that you mention it, I'll just quickly add this onto it. There's also one of the things that made me switched to Blender. With the release of like Half-Life Alyx and all that, well, I guess it's Dota 2, they included a version of like Source Filmmaker 2, which would have been great. Source 2 looks amazing. And like for a little while, I was like, I'll hold out until they eventually release it, because back when like Half-Life Alyx came out, it was like the first new Half-Life game in years. So part of me was like, oh my god, old Valve is back. They're gonna start making games and software again. But then they let it die. I'm like, yeah, this is not gonna go anywhere. It's the Source Filmmaker 2 or Source 2 Filmmakers like also very limited. So I'm like, nah,
they locked it down, didn't they?
Yeah,
I heard, didn't they?
They locked it down. And it's like really hard to like actually make the models for it, from what I've heard. Don't correct me if I'm wrong. So I was like, yeah, that was like a little bit of me that like, I was like, the little bit of hope that there was for like actually releasing a new version of Source Filmmaker was like, nah, I'll just go ahead and move on to Blender. Might as well. Because at the same time, it's probably going to be limited by like same things where like you could only like import sources and models and all that. So
that's the thing. Like, I guess like, I don't think it was a part of their plan. They sort of
shoehorned
I guess
it
after
in,
that,
pretty much.
yeah, it's shoehorned it in, and like that wasn't where they were going as a company. I guess that wasn't really a part of their plan. They're more focusing on just publishing software rather than like making their own games and stuff so much. I think they still make the odd, of course, you've Half-Life Alyx and stuff, but largely they're focusing just as a publisher these days, aren't they, Valve?
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess it's just like just thinking what could have been if they'd actually decided to let's make Source 64-bit so there's no memory limit and stuff. That just doing that would have been a massive.
Oh yeah, that would have been like
plus.
The best update ever. Just like being able to not have to worry
just
about
remove
those
the memory
crashes.
cap.
Yeah. That would have, I think, made quite a few people like even stick around. I don't know how many people got deterred by the fact that like it kept crashing and all that. Like, it's amazing what one single update could have like done to.
I'm not a programmer, by the way. I don't even know if that was even feasible. But I guess like, but it's if they did something like that, maybe that like it could have maybe had a bit more longevity. But I guess like it's SFM is showing its age. I think for a lot of people, I think more and more people I find are slowly deciding to transition over to Blender, slowly but surely. I've noticed.
Yeah, I've been noticing that a lot. Like, a lot of people are like just making the jump to it, which don't get me wrong, it's amazing. Like, they did some amazing works in Source Filmmaker. Now I can't wait to see what they accomplish in Blender.
Yeah, that's the exciting thing, isn't it? Like, with these talented people with like less limitations, you're not bound by the software. Like, you can do a lot more with it, providing your PC can cope with what you want to do.
Exactly. So it's going to be amazing to see how the art scene looks from here on out in the future, at least pertaining from SFM to Blender.
Oh, definitely. And the good thing is, like, if a lot of this, if you know what add-ons to use, you can import the vast majority of the source assets into Blender. You might need to do a bit of conversions here and there, but like, it's totally plausible and possible to do that and still use a lot of the cool stuff that you've made. But that's why I will do my tutorial at some point. I've recorded a little bit, but I'm getting through it slowly. But that's on its way, folks. I will try my best to resolve that, because it can be quite tricky to especially you convert stuff into Blender from SFM, and that's just one of the many subcategories. Like, if you want to like learn how to import assets, and like especially with MLP stuff, you're probably going to need to learn how to do that. But I am working on it. I will get to it eventually. But that's just an aside. But of course, so with the MLP artwork, you said you started off learning Five Nights at Freddy's, or FNAF as the community calls it. So when did you, not long after you were making FNAF artwork, you got interested in MLP? So that decided that after that point, was it an episode of the show that like you thought, I might make some artwork with it? How did you get into that specifically?
All right. Well, I've basically been in the fandom ever since like 2011, like shortly after like the first season ended. The main reason I didn't get into like MLP artwork right away was because I didn't know that those resources were available. But I forget what I was watching exactly. I think I was watching like some fan animation or something one day on YouTube. I think it was like an Agrodamon animation, and I logged on again to like to E621, and I saw that there was again a 3D image of like the MLP characters in like anthro form. I'm like, again, I saw the text and said, "Yo, it says Source Filmmaker." And again, I just did a little bit digging around. I saw that the assets, or at least like the Soria body, was available on SFM Lab. I downloaded it and took like a week to actually get it up and running because head hacking is a goddamn nightmare.
Just as an aside for people who don't know, what is head hacking specifically? When you say head hacking, what does that mean specifically?
Head hacking is a term for something like a method used in Source Filmmaker to replace in this case, the head of a model, which in those times, the most popular model to use for this method of getting anthroponies up and running was the Soria model, which I don't know if that's like a character from another like video game or just like an OC, but
I'm not sure to be honest on that one. Might be worth looking into that.
Yeah, I never actually knew like where the character actually came from, but that's besides the point. The Soria model was, for some reason, I also don't really know the reason why. The one that got like chosen to be like the base model for the body of the anthroponies. So what you had to do was basically shrink the head bone of the Soria model, and then basically shrink the whole body of the pony model, and then you had to like parent the bones in a way where like the neck of the pony was sticking out of what is now like the empty cavity of the head for the Soria model. Sounds really
that sounds like a nightmare.
It was a nightmare, my guy. And like for somebody who didn't know absolutely anything at that point, somebody who was just accustomed to literally importing the characters and just posing and getting it over with, doing all this extra work was like, oh my god, what am I going on? And that's just like setting up the body, because then you actually had to go and like change the body textures yourself. You had to go into like the properties, or like, yeah, basically like the properties of the model inside of Source Filmmaker, and then just sort of like switch around the VTFs and all that. And it was very intimidating. Like you had to have well, the way I did, I always had like a notepad open with like the basics of like replacing the body, the legs, and the arms. And then I just had
your own notes.
Yeah, my own notes. And then I had to look for the pony I was going to use. And I was very not intuitive with it. Like the way I should have done it was like maybe take a day off and like set up all the ponies in a separate session so I could just like import it over to like whatever I was going to work on. But like having to do that for each session that I was going to work on was nightmarish, if I had to put it a single way. It was like I really had to like set aside a project where I was going to like, okay, I'm going to make an MLP artwork, and I'm going to have to head hack, and I'm going to have to like look up where the textures are and the ones I need and all that. It was very, I don't know if primitive is a right word, but it was very tedious to like get that up and running. And like that's only for the head. You also had to, I believe, like move it a little bit around so you could get like the tail and the wings and all that. It was a nightmare. I mainly, for the most part, worked with unicorns and Earth ponies just so I could like avoid having to work with the wings, because it just.
I'm sort of glad I think I skipped Source Filmmaker.
Yeah, no, those were dark days. Like if you were making like MLP related content, you were like really dedicated to making it, in my opinion. Because like
sounds like an awful lot of work to do what you want with it. Like a lot of
that's only to like get the character. That's only to get the character set up for like to start posing, not like actually doing the pose and all that, or like the scene build and all that.
Oh my god.
So yeah, you skipped out on probably the worst era of like SFM MLP stuff.
It's a bit of a mixed bag, isn't it? Like it's a blessing and a curse not having that Source Filmmaker knowledge, I suppose. Like if you started off a source filmmaker, it is a blessing because, in a way, because like you've still got that knowledge, you've got a bit of you're a bit more familiar with the 3D space. But by the same token, with if you're just skipping straight into Blender first of all, you've got no sort of expectations, and you're not bound by the limitations. I suppose it's a bit of give and take, I suppose, really. So
yeah, but pretty much you just take the good with the bad. If I'm being completely honest, I don't even know where I saw that head hacking tutorial. I don't know if it came with like the whole like texture pack for the Soria body, or if there was like a video on it. I honestly can't remember how I actually learned it. It just sort of happened, and that's basically what I did from like 2017 up until like the release of next gen, and I remember, I want to say I remember this happened. Red Rocket SFM. I don't know if you know him from the next gen project. I remember one time he like messaged me saying, "Oh, we're working on a project that like saves time of setting up like characters. Like you don't need to like head hack or anything." And I was like, yes. "Oh, that's going to be interesting." I was like, "Oh, I'm genuinely interested." And then I didn't hear anything for like a couple of years, because I was like, I believe when they were like maybe just getting the project started. I don't know when they exactly started working on it, but eventually, back in like 2019, I want to say was when it was released. I don't actually remember. I saw that like they announced it like next gen project announcement or whatever, and they had the ponies obviously with the promotional images. They had like the main six all around the next gen logo, and then like they had a couple of like other images. They had a link to it to Mega, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit skeptical. I was like, how can they have made this so easy? So I downloaded it. It was quite the big file because they like actually managed to get quite a few characters in there. And the first thing I ever set up with NextGen was Smolder, because like at the time, those were characters that weren't easily available with like the Red Dash Soria model.
Yeah, the dragon characters.
Yeah, the dragon characters. I'm like, I'm gonna test this out, see if it's true, if they really did get this up and running. And yeah, I read the documentation that came with the download. I imported everything, and lo and behold, you only had to like drag and drop one or two things, and it was good to go. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this has changed everything. Like that's when I feel like they really unlocked the potential of like all the lewd MLP artists in the SFM scene. I remember thinking to myself when like I finally had Smolder all set up, I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be just the most amazing time in the SFM community. They deserve all the praise they can get.
It was like a big game changer, wasn't it? Like when like once like one of the big projects like first like got off the ground, and like it's a way easier process of importing characters. I think that's a truly massive step. It just makes me laugh, like with I don't know how, like, it's just sort of after a certain amount of time, I guess, like people sort of gravitate towards lewd stuff. I guess I don't know what causes that. I guess it depends on the artist, I suppose.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, ever since I started with the SFM, I've always been a lewd artist. Not to say that I don't like to tinker with safer work stuff every now and then, but I don't know. I guess just because that's like the most popular thing. I guess something about seeing like these characters that everybody loves, just like in adult situations. There's something, I don't know, what's called entertaining or enjoyable about it. It's very weird. Like, yeah, it's everybody tends to like gravitate towards it. It's just like seeing them, I guess, out of character pretty much, because you know they're nothing like that in the actual show. So it's more of a
very different show if it was the case.
It'd be very different. It'd be very upside down. We'd be putting them in safer work situations.
It's not like it's not like a YouTube tutorial. Is like, how do I make this
exactly?
How do I make you have to sort of figure it out yourself or know where to look, and I think that's probably half of the battle, I suppose. Like you start, oh, I might want to try something like that, but it's sort of who do I ask, where do I go? You sort of, I guess the community finds you, I suppose.
Pretty much, like you get that like little curiosity. It's like, I wonder how they made that in Source Filmmaker, how they made that in Blender, and then you just sort of like ask around all that. You'll see kind of the basics of how to maybe post a character in like a YouTube tutorial, but then like, but yeah, how do I get the nude characters? And then you search up most of the time nude character for Source Filmmaker. You'll probably end up in like SFM Lab, and bada bing, bada boom, you are part of the lewd community.
Yes, boom, done.
one Twitter account open later, one BlenderGuru username generated, and you're good to go. Pretty much.
Good to go. That's how you get started. I think it's like sort of a strange sort of journey. Like if you asked me a couple of years ago, I wouldn't like if I'd ever thought I'd ever be a lewd artist, I'd say you're crazy. But it's crazy how a couple of years change.
Exactly. It's like
I guess.
Looking back on it, like I would have never imagined enjoying this show would lead me to years later making these images or being this sort of artist. Like maybe if you would have told me, oh, you're gonna make artwork of the MLP characters, I thought, oh, cool, I'm probably gonna draw them, I don't know, drinking tea or something. I would never imagine I'd be posting them naked with their behinds to the camera and all that. It's like, oh, that's one way, that's one path to go down in life.
We've gotten corrupted. It's too late. It's too far. We're too far gone now, I think.
I'm all right with it. I wouldn't. Thinking back on it, I probably wouldn't have it any other way. The signs were there, so
yes,
I can't really blame anybody else.
You've only got yourself to blame.
Exactly.
You can't blame those wholesome Blender YouTubers. It's not their fault, but they're the enablers.
They teach you the basic, and then you decide what path you go down.
The dark side, I suppose. So let's mix it up a little bit. Let's take one of the questions that we've received from Anthroponies. SFM has sent us a few questions in.
Bless you, Anthroponies, for giving us a couple of questions.
Yeah, he's probably one of the best SFM artists going out there artwork. Still, I think. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go with. So, what is it you like about being an artist? And what is it you don't like about being an artist when working on artwork? I've expanded that a little bit more.
Oh.
What is it you like the most about being an artist, or anything that you dislike?
Things I like. Working on the art, it's very, at least, therapeutic for me. It's always enjoyable when I get like that idea in my head and I'm able to work on it. Which is also partially one of the reasons I became an artist, because it got to a point where I want to see certain characters in certain poses. And I'm always more of a DIY sort of mentality. So I'm like, I'll do it myself. If I can't find it online, I'll go out, do it myself. I like maybe being out and about my day and just like suddenly having this idea come to life, or like come to my mind, and then just going home and working on it and like making it come to life. Obviously, the thing I love the most is the community. I love seeing all the beautiful artwork that everybody posts on Twitter and on BlenderGuru each and every single day. It's perfect. It's a great way to get inspired. And I don't know, I just really like meeting new people around here. It's one of the things I like about artists. It's a very welcoming community, in my opinion. No matter what fandom or like what kind of art you're doing, it's always pretty welcoming. So that's something I like about it.
What about dislike? Is there anything that, like, any drawbacks you can think of in particular that you don't like?
Drawbacks? I guess just the frustration that does inevitably come with working on art. Like, where you will probably go into a project with all the confidence, with all the energy into it, and then it most of the time only takes like one little thing to sort of skew you into being like, oh, why am I even working on this? This is probably going to turn out horrible. Nobody's going to like this. And then, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's just me, I get pretty easily discouraged with like when something doesn't go exactly how I had it planned out. So I'll start having like a lot of self-doubt. I'll be like, why am I even posting this when there's people making like things that are a million times better? Why would anybody bother seeing my art? Or like maybe I'm just getting like sympathy likes and all that. A lot of like just like crazy uh, self-loathing ideas that come to mind. I think that's like the main thing I don't like. Just the when as soon as something goes wrong, it seems like everything just sort of derails.
I think if it hit the nail on the head there, I think especially for me, I totally agree with you. Well, I think probably one of the best things about making art is like how it's opened so many doors as a person, and how like I've met so many really awesome people and made some really cool friends just by making artwork. So even if I were to stop making artwork tomorrow, I think I've gotten a lot out of it simply like the people I've come across and like the friendships I've made. I think that's a huge thing for me. Anyway, and with drawbacks, I guess it's more whether you do it for a living or not. Like depending on how invested you are, or if you're literally your livelihood depends on it. I guess so. But I'm just speaking as a person who does all this on the side. So I guess I think this the same with you, isn't it? Like you don't do this for a living. You don't do this as your full-time job. You do it as a
Yeah, it's more
as
of a
hobby.
hobby for me, just like something I like to work on my free time and all that.
Do you suffer with burnout? Is that like a common thing for you, or is that only certain? Is it more people who make a livelihood out of it, or what's is that quite common?
I suffer a lot with burnout, but that I like to attribute it more like not to get a real o'clock here or anything due to my like anxiety and all that. Like I get really really burned out because as soon as I like a little idea comes creeping into my mind, they're like, "Why are you working on this? Like, why even bother?" As soon as that like little idea crosses my mind for even a second when I'm working on something, I'll get slowly discouraged to the point where like I'll go I don't know if you noticed, I'll go even months without like uploading art, which is really counterintuitive because at the same time, all those months that I'm not working on something, I'll be telling myself like, "Oh, stop wasting time. Open up Blender, open up Source Filmmaker, do something. Just like do the bare minimum so you can get back into the rhythm of things." So it's like
Yeah.
it's really frustrating. I have gone through burnout quite a few times, which is probably the worst part about being an artist. Like when you get to that stage,
Yeah.
it's horrible because you know it's like you can probably feel it coming. And it's like, oh no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, and then bam, burnout.
Yeah, it's you can't really force it, really, can you? Like, but even if you try as you might, sometimes you just don't have the motivation or the drive to make anything, like for various reasons. Like something might be happening in your life, or you just want to take a break from it. But I can relate with like I guess sometimes having a bad relationship with with making artwork in general, like spending far too long making something, or when like perhaps like I should take breaks more frequently. That's quite a common thing. I don't know whether that's the same with you.
For me, it's more of like if I take too long with an art piece, like say more than a couple of days, it'll start to like drive me crazy because I'm like, oh, you've already spent, let's say, 4 days on this on just one piece, whereas you could probably have made two different pieces, like working 2 days on each of them. And I don't know, it's really weird. I don't really actually like to take breaks when I'm starting to feel like burnout, which might be counterintuitive because I know that like as soon as I take the break, I'll probably just stop making art for like weeks at a time, and that's not something I like. I tend to like always have like ideas written down or like reference images so I can like be like, oh, I want to work on that next, or that's something I want to use as motivation for my next piece and all that, just so I can kind of avoid that like that burnout phase.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of people, a lot of artists especially, experience it in different ways. I suppose again going back to because some, as I say, like if you just do all this art on the side as both me and yourself do, you don't really. We do have the luxury of like taking a break if we need to. It's not like our livelihoods depend on it, where some people actually do require can't stop literally
Yeah,
it
there's
can
like
get people can get
it it's either you keep going or you stop and you're not eating that month or that week or something. So that's
it's quite a common thing I see with like a lot of artists I've seen. Like they've literally their livelihoods depend on it, or they've taken on far too many commissions that they can deal with at once. That's another common thing. But yeah, I'm just speaking as a guy who doesn't really do it for a living, but like I can totally sympathise with people who sort of don't really have a choice in the matter, really. But like that balance can be quite difficult to get right, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's definitely trying to like tiptoe the line of like, okay, this is what I'm liking. It's like, okay, I got to make sure I'm giving myself some time to rest, maybe catch my bearings and get up and running again, so I can continue this continuous flow of art. Pretty much, just finding that like sort of, I guess, flow state of like being able to work on something consistently.
Get a good rhythm going, I guess, which can be quite difficult. Sometimes like you want to work for hours at a time because like what you're working on you're really enjoying it, but other times it's feels more of a slog, I guess, when you sometimes hit a brick wall when you maybe try to do something that you don't quite know how to do right, I guess.
Yeah, when it's something like you just had like the bare minimum understanding or like idea of what you want to do, it's like I'll open up Blender, kind of get it kind of going, and then just like working on it in like another hour or something. I don't know. It's really weird. I guess it really depends on the project too.
Yeah, definitely. So what's your opinion on Patreon and Subscribestar, that sort of side of things? Like, what's your opinion on putting artwork behind a paywall?
Speaking from experience, I used to have a Patreon. I just barely recently opened it up again. The way I went about it, I'm not a big fan of like locking it behind paywalls entirely, because I feel like if I'm making it so all the people that want to see it can see it. I could maybe understand it a bit more if it's like a timed exclusive to Patreon, which is the way I did it on my Patreon. Like I would release the pieces first on there, for a week. Is the way I did it. Like I released it first there on a week, and then I released it on Twitter, for everyone to see. Obviously, I understand these artists from where they're coming from. I believe that's like a way of getting more Patreons on there, because you got that exclusive art that you can't get anywhere else, so it's more of an incentive. But I wish more artists would do it that way, where it's more of a timed exclusive than just like strictly behind the paywall.
Yeah, it's sort of it's quite a controversial thing, because like I guess like it depends on who you ask. Like a lot of people have got different opinions on that side of things. I think I guess artists can monetize their art how they want, but I guess there's always the question of does it take anything away if you basically start charging for it or putting things, as you say, behind a paywall. I guess it's sort of the politics or the morality up behind it, I guess, like depending on how you see things, I guess. Like I support quite a few people on Patreon myself, because I don't mind some of the artists that I support. I like to support their work, and they get to do what they do best, basically. But I get not everyone, I guess. I guess some people do abuse the system, which is unfortunate. I'm not going to name names, of course, but it can be a case where like people like charge extortionate prices for things and not basically just take money from people every month and not do barely any work for it.
Pretty much. I guess it really comes down to like why is this valued so much more compared to like the free art? Like what really sets it apart? I don't know if I'm wording this correctly or if I'm making sense, but like if you got the same artist making a free piece on Twitter, maybe let's say naked Fluttershy, but then they make a just slightly different post version and then put it behind a paywall, and like where only Patreons of certain tier can see it. Like what's the difference there? Like why is this valued so much more? I don't know if I'm framing it right. Like I don't know why. Like what values this piece more than the other one, even if it's like the same artist? Because it's pretty much only down to the artist saying, okay, I'm gonna put this strictly behind a paywall, like you got to pay me a certain amount to be able to see it.
Yeah. I guess it's a bit of a balancing act as well. Like a good way probably to do it is like maybe you can still do release the free stuff, but like maybe like just the higher res hot versions behind the paywall for people who want, or maybe the watermarkless versions. That's quite a common way to do it.
Yeah, that's.
And it links in with commissions as well. I guess like I do believe that people should be able to charge what they want for their artwork, and I guess you are going to get people who grumble with that. But I guess like, at the end of the day, with artwork, I think people have got to decide what their time is worth. Like this piece took you, I don't know, how many hours to put together, and then you decide to charge X amount. What's your opinion on commissions then? Does that link in with the Patreon stuff as well, or is that like a separate thing?
I'd probably see that more as a separate thing. 'Cause like I'm perfectly fine with actually like people charging whatever they feel like they want to charge for commissions. I think after all, when they're making that art for somebody, or when somebody's paying for it, it ultimately comes down to like the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. If, let's say, somebody wants to charge $50 for a single image, and somebody will, like, without a doubt, without second guessing, pay that, then they're totally allowed to, because that's ultimately what they value it at, I guess, which is like a big counterpoint to what I just said. But in this case, like, they're directly paying for that. That's because they're okay with paying that much amount. And ultimately, most of the times when it comes to commissions, like, they end up being released to the public, and there's, like, usually no big deal about it. Like, the person will commission it so that other people can see. Whenever I've done commissions, I don't actually have any firm price on my commissions. I'm more of a name your price type of person, mainly because I don't actually know how to properly value my art. The idea that somebody would pay me to make an image is wild. I don't know why. I just can't wrap my head around it. So I'm just sort of like, dude, you pay me whatever you want to pay me. And most of the times, people will pay you way more than I would have ever expected. So that's always like that's at least how I choose to see it. If somebody wants to have a firm price on their art, all the right to them, no problem. I don't mind if they want to charge exuberant amounts. Well, that's probably because that's what they value their work at, and people are probably not going to have a problem with that. There's always going to be people that pay those exuberant prices, because I've actually seen a lot of cases where that happens. So that's totally fine with me.
Yeah, it depends on, I guess, like, it depends on the artist as well. That is an issue that's worth bringing up. Like, if you're not sure of what your art is worth, it can be difficult to gauge what you should reasonably charge for it. I think, so that is another common issue, I think. But as long as you, the artist, are happy with the price that you've set or what people are paying you, then there isn't really an issue with that, really, I don't think.
Oh, no, not at all.
But at least not directly. But then again, there's always the case of if too many people are maybe undervaluing their work, it could make it like a bit more difficult for other people in some ways, I guess. But as a person who's never taken any commissions thus far, I can't really comment on that great. I'm only just commenting from what I can see from here. Like, I've toyed with the idea of commissions, but it's sort of a lot of caveats for me personally, for me to take any at the moment. Mainly on the inexperience, I guess. I think I'm a bit like, I don't know whether I'm feasibly good enough to justify charging people. But I get it's pretty, like, going by the amount of followers I have on Twitter, that I guess the opposite is true, which is I still haven't quite gotten my head around that, which is over 400 people like to watch my art, which is pretty crazy at the time of recording this. But it's you're always going to get people with who like maybe you charge like a lot exuberant amounts, as you say, but like if people are willing to pay those prices, then all the power to them, because like if you're willing to pay a certain, like, quite a high price for an art, that means you as a commissioner or a purchaser of art, I guess, a patron, I should say, you are willing to pay that price because you like that person's art and you want to pay for this person's services. That's what you're basically paying for. But I guess even if you don't agree with a person's prices, I have seen people where people try to haggle people down. I think that goes a bit too far in my opinion. But I don't know what your take is on that.
Yeah, no, I think that if it's somebody that's already been doing commissions for a while, they already got their list of set prices, I think haggling them or trying to haggle them it's a bit scummy because, it's maybe I can understand that you really like the artist, but you just can't afford it. But, like, maybe it depends on the intention or, like, what angle you're coming in with trying to haggle. If you're doing it from a malicious standpoint or where you want to screw over the artist, then, yeah, like, that's a terrible thing to do. If you maybe want to, like, talk with the artist, be like, oh, what can I afford maybe for the price that I have, maybe you're able to like reach an understanding with the artist. But I've never actually had to see in a situation where people like haggle with the artist.
Not with myself, but definitely saw this on Twitter. Like, I can't remember who it was exactly. But the name's not important. But like, basically, an artist I follow on Twitter. He charges quite high prices, but like from how skilled this person actually is, in my personal opinion, it's completely justified. And like several $100s like per piece, because he spends hours and hours and hours making them, and they're professionally put together and they're really classy and really sharp and really well done. I can't, from my point of view, like the prices are justified. But somebody on Twitter was basically saying, "I like your art, but it's too expensive for X, Y, and Z," which I think is just the most scummiest thing you could do.
That is the worst way to come about it.
That pissed me off. That did. It wasn't even my artwork. It's like, who the hell do you think you are?
Like, who are you to undermine what this artist, what their value of their art is? Like, obviously, I'm pretty sure the artist has like a portfolio of past commissions that deny that guy's point by far. That's just like people who are trying to like just be mean about it, I guess. That's just like very scummy to go about. It's like, oh, I don't think your art is worth that much. I can understand if you say,
but I still want it.
Yeah, like, oh, it's not worth it, but I still want it. I've seen better, but I'll still take a piece if you can do it for like pennies on a dime or whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of bullshit. That's BS. I did say that on Twitter, but I was like, I can't believe you have the nerve to ask that.
The absolute gall to like think that would work. That'd be like that. The artist would be like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I'll do the piece for you. Like, I don't care that you just insulted me. I'll do the art piece."
Yeah. Like, it's just like, yeah. My apologies. I'll reduce my price down to nothing for you. Would you like it gift wrapped as well? I'll do that for you. Oh man, but for people, that sort of stuff I don't want to deal with. I think that's probably why I haven't really looked at commissions, I suppose. I just don't want to deal with that crap. I'd rather just make what I want and not still get criticised anyway. It's just wow. Have you ever come across anything like that? But anything like people asking you for freebies effective? I think everybody, it's a rite of passage. I think like kind of have free commissions.
I think if you haven't been asked for free art, you're probably doing something wrong, because that's something I think it's like in the artist 101 basics. Get asked for free art. Yeah, I've come across a lot of people that have been like, yo, I don't know what commission in their mind means, but they'll be like, oh, can you do a commission for me? I'm like, oh yeah, what are you looking for to get? And they'll explain the scene. They'll always want like a really complex scene with like a gazillion different characters doing a gazillion different things. And then I'll tell them, I'll give them kind of a price when I kind of sniff out where they're going towards. I'll be like, yeah, I can do this for maybe like a X amount of dollars. Like, oh, you actually charge money for it? I'm like, well, yeah, you say you wanted a commission. They're like, oh, no, I don't have any money. I'm like, well, then why were you asking for commissions, my dude? It's like, oh, no, I just really like your art. I wanted you to do it for free. I've definitely been hit with the very famous, I'll pay you with exposure. back when I was a lot smaller artist,
no.
a lot smaller of an artist. So I was yeah, no, I think I'm gonna skip. Like, if they would have approached me in a different way, it's like, yo, I really like your art. I don't have the money for it. If you maybe got the time to do a request or something, maybe things would have been a little bit different. But like, they'll approach me with the word commission, and in my mind, like, yeah, that means paying for something. But then they'll be like, oh no, I'll pay you in exposure, my dude. That's
Yeah, okay.
I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm good. I'll just stick to the couple of likes I get on my pieces. I don't really want to work on this big project for just like, and there'll always be people with like at most like 5 followers, and it's probably all just their like alternative accounts or something like that. Not to undermine them, but like it's always a certain type of person.
With like with no profile picture as well, and like 300 digits after the name. I'd like some. Oh, but I've been in that situation before. Like I've like in the I get like from the other point of view anyway. Like before I started making my own artwork, of course I started commissioning people. I think that's probably like 2019 maybe I first started commissioning art before I started learning Blender, so probably 2019, something like that, late 2019 I think it was. But like I used to, now that I'm an artist, I now realise like how much of a dick I was, if that makes sense, because I can't believe I did that.
You learn the etiquette to how to do things.
Yeah, I wasn't in the situation where I was willing to pay the guy, and like I paid the guy, and the commission was amazing, but I was sort of like, I guess, overzealous with like requesting like loads of alternative edits. Like I was sort of pestering, I guess, the guy to make more stuff. I was willing to pay for it, but like looking at like the text log and stuff, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But I sympathise in some ways. In some like now I've been in that sort of situation before, and I didn't realise at the time how much of a tit I was at the time, I guess. But that's my comeuppance, I guess. But so like I didn't really I just left it at that. But like I with commissions, I try to be as understanding and like as open as possible, and like I'm willing to whatever price that an artist says they want to charge, I'll say, yeah, that's awesome. Here's my terms. Like, do you agree? Yes, I do. Like I tend to try to let artists like have a bit of freedom with it as well. That's I do like the commissions. My commissions do better than my own art a lot of the time. So I'm better at commissioning pieces than making my own stuff, which is weird. But like I'm glad that I get to signal boost a lot of people whenever I can.
Yeah, at least you're a supporting artist. That's always a big plus. It's always a big motivator. And who knows? Sometimes you just want to commission the art. Sometimes you don't want to take the time out of your day or something to like really work on it yourself. It's better to have somebody else's interpretation of your idea. Like I've sadly never actually like commissioned anybody. It's something I want to change in the future. Like start commissioning more people, because sometimes I'll be like, there's certain ideas I want, but I know my skill set. I know I can't truly do them justice. So it's better to approach somebody else who I know will probably bring this idea to life in a proper manner, and probably a lot better than anything I could ever do.
And anybody in particular that you want to commission, but like for whatever reason can't, or like haven't had chance to?
I don't know. Pretty much everybody I follow on Twitter, I would love to commission. Basically everybody like Anthroponies. I don't know if you know who Havexi is. Hoofsart. Maybe Kaiser as well. I don't know. There's a lot of people, like not just what's called 3D related. I love to do a lot of like also like 2D stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, that's something I want to sort of do more in the future. Is like maybe work on more commissions. I mean, not work on more commissions. Actually, buy commissions, I guess, or whatever it's, however you phrase that.
Yeah. It's like that's the best thing to do to support an artist. I think like if they're taking commissions, and maybe throw something their way, maybe, and have a think about like what would be really awesome in that particular person's art style, and then see if they're available. Send them a message and see if they accept your offer of making some artwork. But just don't a good tip is like don't pester people. Don't, like, if a person's not open or they're not interested, then don't like
Yeah, no.
push the issue. Like people can be pushy sometimes. Have you ever had that in that anything like that? People like being a bit pushy with you, like perhaps like with yourself, like wanting artwork in a particular way or whatever.
Back in my early days, back in my Tumblr days, I had a lot of like messages almost on the daily, like being, "Hey, are you open for requests? Can you do this, please? Do work on this, do that. Why aren't you doing what I said?" and all that. More recently, no, everybody's been super kind. Everybody I've like done commissions for and all that, everybody is super kind. They're super like uh okay with everything that like I tell them. Like there's hasn't been issues. It was more on my early days where people would be like really pushy and like maybe not. I guess it's the shyness in people, I guess, that kind of makes them come off as like a bit too aggressive at times. But no, thankfully nothing too serious. I think at most one person wanted me to like work on a project with them where they were making like I think it was like a comic book or something. Well, a web comic, but they were like really insistent that they wanted me to work on it. But I think they were like confused. I think they thought I was actually like modeling the characters that I was working with.
Yeah,
so,
that I've had that a few times, asking me like if I'm
that's probably like one of the biggest issues I've come across. Like, "Hey, can you model this character for me?" It's like, "Oh no, I don't make any of the characters I used in my artwork," which is something I need to fix going forward. I need to like start adding credits to like who makes the actual model so I can avoid that.
That is another discipline in itself. Modeling, you got modeling, you got animation, you got lighting, you got that's a separate thing in it, ballpark in itself.
Yeah, that's a whole another can of worms that I've yet to get to. I'd love to, but that's still like further down the line of.
It's good. Modeling is good fun. I'm still a bit of an amateur at it, but I have released a few models to the public, of course. But it's some people like don't understand. They might think like, "Oh, this person's done this really cool artwork with Twilight or Fluttershy or whatever," and like, "Oh, could you make my own OC characters?" No, not really. I'm not a modeler as it should be. Like, but I can put you in the direction of people who can model, but often they will charge for it because, again, like they're not going to model things for free.
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah, that when it comes to those sort of things, I fully support people like getting paid for modeling and all that, because that is one heck of a job to do.
Yeah, it's especially within like next gen as well. I probably only know about 2 or 3 people at the most who know how to model manes and tails. There's only a handful of people I know how to do them well, like specifically for next gen. So it can be. If you're within that niche, it can be lucrative, I guess, if you wanted to, were that way inclined. But there's not very many people who are good at that. But I know a few people. But again, like it's if it's like an OC you're looking for, you're gonna have to find out how much it will cost to actually have that made. But yeah, people, I think some people that don't understand the mechanics of, I guess, 3D artwork, because it's so many different multifacets to it, I guess.
Yeah, there's so many things behind the scenes that you got to work with. I think maybe they think it's just the same as like 2D art, where you just draw out the character maybe in a 3D space and you're good to go. But there's like so many things that go into it, and it's okay to correct and be like, "Oh, it's very difficult to set up. I can kind of help you set up a character, but like
oh yeah, of course,
if you got one of those crazy mains that like you come up with these like Goku anime style mains, yeah, you're gonna have to pay quite a bit of money, I think, to get that fully done for your 3D model.
Yeah, it's knowing like what you're looking for, I guess. But like the best thing to, even if you're not entirely sure if people can help you, like you can always ask the question. It never hurts to do that at all, really. It's so, but and you do get like people who are could you like make this artwork for me? And like you say, I can't really do that, but I know someone who can help you, and like here's the contact information, is their Twitter or whatever, and like just see what they say. But like I guess like it's it's just one of those things. Like I get, like I don't think you haven't. I guess you haven't made it as an artist until like people start coming to you for advice. I guess I think you can start considering yourself actually. People actually want to come to you for advice and stuff. It's so yeah, it's one of those things where it can be a very it can be quite a bit of a minefield, but like you become, I think you consider yourself an artist once people start asking for you advice, and then like you are now a part of the community, which is a cool thing.
Yeah, like that's like when people start considering you knowledgeable in your field. It's like it's a really warm feeling. I've had like maybe one or two people actually come to me and be like, "Yo, how do I do this and do that?" I'm like, "Are you actually asking me?" I'm like, "Wow, I'm surprised that you would choose me out of all the people." And it's a nice feeling, but like it really does say a lot about like maybe your progress as an artist, where like people can safely say that guy knows what he's doing. He knows how to work his way around maybe his art field of art. So let's go ahead and ask him what advice he could give people, or like how to do this and that.
Yeah, it's I like to give people advice whenever they can, but of course like you acknowledge that you can't do everything maybe, but you know someone else who can assist with that. I think that's part of the process, and like the more you grow as an artist, the more you're able to help people. I think that's one of the best things that definitely one of the best things, personal pleasures for me anyway, when people come to me for advice and I'm able to actually answer their Blender questions or help them out with a problem. That's a really cool thing, which I'm quite humbled about. Which is I think that's one of the best things about being an artist, isn't it? Like being a part of something bigger, and like people respect you enough to ask you questions and like even commission your stuff, which is awesome.
Yeah, it is one of the best feelings. Like that's, being able to say, oh, people are definitely enjoying what I'm doing. Like I'm definitely doing something right if people are like what's called interacting with my stuff in this way, or interacting with me to this point where like you can build these friendships and like pass on knowledge or point people in the right direction of resources that may help them and all that. That's a very, very nice feeling that I think you don't really get anywhere else if you're like outside of this maybe community of like artists and all that, or like creators, I guess.
Yeah, creators or content creators is the term.
Yeah.
I'd hesitate to call myself a content creator. Like I'm more of a glacier that like moves at like 2 miles an hour. You sometimes see art out of me every 3 months, maybe at a push. I guess.
I think pretty much like the second you choose to upload something you yourself created on the internet, no matter with what frequency you do it, you can pretty much consider yourself a content creator, or I guess if we want to be nice about it, because I don't like the word content creator that much, an artist in this situation. If you're uploading something every now and then, unless you absolutely like stop, and even if you stop, like it's still, you still made that piece of art. You're still an artist. You're still participating in this community.
Yeah, taking the first step. What was it like for you, like uploading your first artwork? Was it quite a daunting experience?
It was definitely like a weird thing, because like all the time that I was like working on it on Source Filmmaker, I was like, oh man, am I really gonna upload this? Is this something I kind of feel like putting up on the internet? And like I didn't know anything then. Like I didn't know how to do lighting or anything like composition and all that. I still kind of don't. But like it was like, oh, should I upload this? I'm like, I'll upload it. What's the worst that can happen? A couple of people say it's crap. That's totally fine by me. I'm somebody that always likes to be working on something, even if I'm not uploading it. Like I always want to be working on a project. I'm like, I'll upload it. Whatever happens, happens. And thankfully, good things happen. And like they continue to happen with each piece that I uploaded. It kind of scares me, if I'm being honest. I yet to get like any big criticism. I think in like the last year that I've been uploading images, I've only gotten like 2 or 3 comments of like actual criticism, which kind of scares me. I feel like when you're not getting that much feedback, something isn't completely right. Maybe that's just my paranoia kicking in or something. I don't know how you see it.
I don't know. I guess so. It's sort of. I guess it's the classic butterflies in the stomach, isn't it? Once you take that first step, you assess like where you want to be. I guess it was certainly a daunting thing for me when I did my very first artwork. Looking back on it, it's not too shabby, but you can tell it's a beginner's piece, if that makes sense. But like people really liked it, and sort of that's how it starts. I guess like if you get your first really good bit of feedback from people, that's the I guess the push you need to. Oh, now I guess you can actually call me an artist, and because I've actually made something in Blender or Source Filmmaker, or I've drew this thing in GIMP or whatever, actually drew it traditionally, or whatever form it takes. You've taken and you've put it on the internet, and for people to look at. Taking that first step and like people giving you support is it's great, but of course not all feedback is going to be good, unfortunately. Have you had any like really weird or strange comments? Just curious.
Curious? No, I have had one piece where admittedly I did mess up a bit of it, but I didn't realize it until they obviously pointed it out. Any weird or notable comments mainly just come from people like being like I guess I want to say they're like role playing in their own little way in the comment section. And
yeah,
like,
role play.
Those are always amusing to see. I'm like, oh well, that's certainly something that somebody decided to comment on the piece. I hope that they said it in a good way, but yeah, like. I think it comes with the territory. You're always going to have people that comment things that are like really strange, not just necessarily saying, "Oh, it's a good piece" or "It's a bad piece." So just taking in a whole different direction, and that's always fun to look at.
Yeah, I've had that on Twitter before. Like people wanting to role play and like they start being weird. Not that I'm against people who want to role play, but I guess you do get some people that take things too far. I think.
I always find it weird because I don't know if they're expecting a reply on my end to continue the role play, or if they're just posting it because that's what their way of like expressing their enjoyment of the image. I never know how to interact with those sorts of comments. I just sort of I just give them a little heart emote on it. I'm like, hopefully that works. Hopefully that's an appropriate response.
I guess it's more to do with the context. I suppose it's I don't know whether I'm fully down with like people like I guess on Twitter you get like people who just like repost artwork. I'm sort of a bit iffy about that, especially if you don't credit people. But I guess it's I don't know. It's a bit too far, I guess, for me if you sort of take a person's artwork and you start role playing using their artwork without their permission, especially if they forbid it. It's I don't know, it's a bit weird for me. I don't know how you feel about such things.
Yeah, I don't like that too much either. Like, I can understand maybe wanting to roleplay. I can understand if you commission artwork specifically if you're going to roleplay. But simply
Oh yes, of course.
But simply grabbing an image from like an artist profile page or like from whatever website and just like using that to roleplay. I've seen cases where they actually like crop out like the watermark and all that, which is kind of scummy in my opinion. I don't like that. I'm not a big fan of it. Like if you want to role play, go ahead. Just don't steal people's art. And or if you're gonna use other people's art, just be sure to credit them properly. I've definitely seen like one or two of my pieces get used around. Thankfully, in both cases, they were like giving me proper credit and all that. I'm like, okay, that's good enough for me. I'm not gonna get too pissy about it. But when they like straight up like steal art and just like maybe sometimes the artist will post it with certain context and people will like completely take it out of context and use it for other means. That's something I'm not really a big fan of.
Yeah, I think like we're going into the territory of like NFTs and stuff like that. We're going into with that boiled like what's your, let's go into that while we're talking about like stolen artwork and things like that. NFTs, what's your stance on those? Have you ever come across anything? What's your view on those? Any experience with those, or have you come across, or any people that like are familiar with NFTs?
NFTs are starting to be one of those things in technology where it really shows my age. I'm not that old, but it's one of those things that makes me go, I don't get the appeal. Like it's really weird because like in my mind, it's like, okay, you're paying for a piece of art when they're properly drawn or actual like proper looking NFTs, but when they're like these pixelated messes, I guess it boils down again to like the beauties in the eye of the beholder. But I don't get them. I don't get why the big fuss about them, and it absolutely irks me when I see that there's people going around like stealing art. I've come around of thankfully I haven't come across anybody stealing my art, which I don't think they ever would, thankfully. But I have come across people that I know having their art stolen, which is just really scummy because like they obviously are stealing it. Why would they ask for permission and all that? I think it's just a really weird concept. I don't fully grasp it. Like, maybe if I was a little bit more educated in the field of NFTs, I would have a more proper opinion about them as it stands. And will, like, the big plague that there is of stealing other people's arts to mint them into, like, NFTs, I think that's, like, the biggest, scummiest thing you can possibly do to anybody.
Yeah, all I see, I think I'm pretty much 100% against them because it's one of those. It's one of those like new. It sounds like a pyramid scheme to me, and like when I come across NFTs, especially like a lot of the artists I follow, all I see is people's artwork getting stolen and minted without their permission, and like people making money off stuff that's not there. It's like stolen goods. That's all I'm seeing all the time.
Yeah, that's all I hear about. It's like it's just stolen art most of the time.
Like OpenSea is such a fucking scummy website.
I fucking hate that website. Like the other day, I saw like a Twitter thread that said like, "Yo, this guy uploaded like thousands and thousands of different people's artwork as NFTs," and I went in and it was crazy to see how many artists I recognized, and like actually like I saw art of one of my like I would consider them like a real life acquaintance because I actually know who they are. I was like, yo, what the hell is going on here? Like, how can they allow this sort of shit? Like I've never heard any positives about NFTs. Obviously, when you're trying to get like duped into buying them, you consider that's a positive, but like actual positives of like its value towards like future commerce or whatever, I see no positivity, no like actual uses for it. Like all I equate it to is like maybe skins in the video game like CS:GO or something. Like what's the difference between a skin in a video game being considered an NFT and this being like this piece of art being an NFT? I don't know. It's so weird.
And the insane power requirements as well, which I don't like. Because a lot of it's like linked to the blockchain technologies with Bitcoin and Ethereum and stuff like that. Like for like minting these transactions and adding them to the blockchain. Like I've heard like the amount of power it requires to maintain this blockchain like requires the power of a small country.
Oh yeah,
it's ridiculous. It's insane the amount of. Yeah, let's just kill the planet even quicker than we already are. That's a good idea.
At first I thought it was like, oh, there's just images with like maybe some code embedded into them that like makes it so they're like unique. When I actually learned like the power that goes behind into a single image, I was like, yo, there's no fucking reason this image requires these many actual real life resources to be made to like be certified, I guess is what they do with them. Like what the fuck is going on here? Like we're doing something terribly wrong if this is the path we're going down with these sort of things.
It's like that's my take on them. I'm like it's one of those ideas where like maybe it sounded good on paper to begin with, like it gave maybe some artists like the idea of like maybe having ownership, like minting your own artworks and things. But all I'm seeing that the complete opposite is happening, where people are just taking advantage of this new idea and exploiting people just to make a quick buck. That's all I'm
saying. I think the worst part is that there's companies backing NFTs. Like, there's companies that are like full force going into like minting their own NFTs. I'm like, yo, that's just the scummiest thing you can do. Like, as a company, is like actually being part of this problem. And like, I can understand maybe things like Ubisoft and all that. I see where they're coming from. There's local pharmacies here in my country that made NFTs. I'm like, who the hell wants to own an NFT of a local pharmacy? It's like, what? This is getting completely out of hand. This is I'm pretty sure nowhere near where like the original concept wanted to go. Like, they've completely twisted this only for like greedy purposes.
It's gotten corrupted, isn't it? Yeah.
I correlated with nothing but absolute greed at this point. There's like no redeeming qualities whatsoever left in this.
Like, I tend to I just block people if people like, I just want no part of it, and like simply because like how I see now how NFTs have like sort of how people exploit other people using NFTs just to make a quick buck and like having their artwork stolen. That's what really boils my blood. Like, people who make a living off these things, and people are just stealing them just to make a quick buck, and then they just disappear into the ether like with no consequences. It's just like it's
sickening.
It's insane. It's insane. It's insane. Like, it's a horrible development, and that's it's just, for me personally, like, don't stay away from NFTs and stuff. If you want to support artists that you like, commission them or give them money on their Patreon or their Subscribe store. Anything
but like buying the NFTs.
Anything but NFT. And just keep away from it. That, like, commissioning people, you're giving artists money directly, you're helping them, you're supporting their art,
and you're getting a cool piece of art out of it too. If you're like commissioning them.
And you get a cool piece of art, yeah, exactly,
tailor-made to you,
stupid
for you. I mean,
to what you wanted, exactly. That's my take on it. I think that's a pretty safe opinion. I think I've yet to come across anybody who enjoys them, especially in my friendship circles. Anyway.
Oh, same here. Like, I've yet to see anybody make any like rational, what's called points to it. Like, oh, it's good for this reason. All that. Everybody is totally against them.
It's really strange, isn't it? That those NFT profile pictures that people buy. I don't understand it. They're ugly.
They're ugly. I've yet to see a proper like NFT that isn't stolen art. That's like original art. Be actually like decent looking, or actually like worth the price.
It's like copy and paste with like, oh, this one's got a different hat on, or this one's got a different. This one's got an eye patch or whatever. It's just
the most idiotic thing ever. It's like the most randomized
I've spent
avatar
$800 on this.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah, justify that all day, mate. It's not going to work with me.
It's not going to work. I paid an artist that same price and got an infinitely better looking image than that horrendous monkey or whatever.
And probably a physical copy of it as well to boot. You could put on the wall. It's like you've got like a JPEG in the ether that can disappear at any time.
Exactly. I can actually hang this on my room and look at it every single day and feel like a million times better about it.
It's just I just can't justify. I think that's my take on it. I think we can move on from NFTs. It's just one of them topics we're like, why is this a thing?
I think most of us can agree they're trash.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from somebody who can actually justify them to me in some way, or maybe explain something maybe I'm not quite getting. But like, from what what I can glean from what people saying all the time on like in the people who follow, and like how they've been affected by NFTs directly, they're bad news.
Exactly. Like, I know nothing about this subject. If you'll be able to educate me for better, not actually try to scam me, with all due respect, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I would like to know, but like all the arguments I've heard, like just don't hold water at all. Like, or they're misinformed themselves. But yeah, I'm always willing to learn more about it. But like largely, I think it's one of those where it's not a good idea in my personal opinion. But there you go. So what are you currently working on? What's your plans with Blender at the moment? Have you got anything in the pipeline you want to learn or want to work on?
Well, I like to start getting into the basics of like modeling, so I can like actually make some models myself. Maybe make some. I know clothes is something that's always like in demand, at least for next gen.
I'd like to learn how to do
Yeah,
that as
I'd
well.
love to be able to like make clothes for the next gen models. Mainly just do something so I can like give back to the community. Animation is something I really really want to like start getting into. I've always been a big fan of like wanting to learn animation, so that's something I'm like trying to get the most pointers about, like trying to get all the like tutorials and all the media I can get that will help me out with that, and maybe work on I don't know, maybe a comic or something. I don't know, something I want to like start up my Patreon again, so I want to make something that'll be like worthwhile them, like something I can like really make it worth it to like support me on there.
How long do you reckon you'll be? I'll put my teeth in. How long do you reckon you'll be doing MLP artwork for? Is interest in the show still relevant to you now with Generation 5 just around the corner?
I'll probably continue doing MLP artwork or related artwork in for like the very foreseeable far future. MLP is one of those things that like really marked me back when I like first saw it. I think I saw it at just the right time, and for better or worse, I think it's always going to be like a part of like my life, to put it in a really weird way. Like I've definitely made so much MLP content. It's one of those things that for whatever reason has inspired me to make content of a whole bunch of variety. I've made videos of MLP. I've made fan fictions. Obviously, I've now making like this lewd art. So I see myself being a part of this community, a part of this fandom for like all my life, making actual MLP centered content. Again, like for the foreseeable future. And well, hope on knock on wood that Generation 5 inspires a lot of artwork, and it's enjoyable more than anything. I think that's to be seen. I really did enjoy the movie. We'll just have to wait and see if the
Yeah, I enjoyed the movie as well. I quite liked the movie. That was really solid, really well put
I was
together.
super pleasantly surprised at how well it was. I think the only thing I didn't like about it was the voice acting. And the only reason I didn't like the voice acting is that I think they nailed every single character. And I know for a fact they're probably not going to be able to bring back the whole voice cast for like the series and all that.
No, I think they're going. Yeah, I don't think because they're going to use normal voice actors. I think because like they were all celebrities, weren't they, in the movie? So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, like
that's the only thing I resented about the movie. That like the voice cast was amazing, and I know for a fact that they're probably not going to be coming back unless they make like another movie.
So you resent the voice acting for being too good, for like setting the bar too high.
Yeah, like I was pleasantly surprised at how well all of these actors work together. I'm big Issy Moonbow stan, so like I enjoyed her.
He's probably the strongest character out the 5.
And like hearing her voice and all that, I'm like I was very like, as I watched the movie, I was really mad because I know that they're probably not gonna get anything anywhere near like her caliber for the show. So that's gonna be kind of disappointing to a point.
Well, we wait and see.
Yeah, well, as I said, I'm hoping for the best.
Very promising.
But that's kind of like they set the bar too high, in my opinion, with the voices.
We'll have to wait and see. Is he sort of like a dialed down Pinkie Pie, just a touch?
Yeah,
I think that's probably it's not quite Pinkie Pie insane, but dialed back just a little bit. I think probably, but you can probably tell where the lineage is. But like, I think Izzy's probably definitely the best character out of the 5. But a really solid, put together ensemble. Anyway, if you ask me, really, really, really fun cast of characters.
Yeah, I really liked I guess they're being called the main 5 now. I really liked all of them. I can't say I didn't like one of them over the other. I think they were all pretty amazing. They work together really well, and yeah, I'm excited to see what sort of adventures they get to go on.
Yeah, that'll be good fun. And like I think they've acknowledged that they can actually move on. They've moved on from Generation 4. It's like a new cast of characters can have a chance at like telling new stories and things. I think that'll be because Generation 4 had a really good run, 9 seasons over 10 years. So it was like lightning in a bottle, wasn't it? It's sort of when it first appeared in 2010.
Exactly. It was like it surpassed everybody's expectations by a good lot. Like nobody, I think, seeing the first season would have ever expected what was to come. And I like to say that like season 1 overall is a pilot to like the rest of the season. Like season 2 is where like the show really got to like shine, because they knew that like, oh, we can be a little bit more not just sticking to the typical girly stuff. 'Cause if you look at the season 1, you can see like they really wanted to make it your typical like children's cartoon where like there was always necessarily a moral lesson to be learned. And after that, they pretty much had like liberty to have fun with the show, which is something I really appreciated, and I think that really helped it have that longevity to last like 9 years.
Yeah, a lot of people say season 2's the best. I think that mainly because of the wedding arc. I think that's probably why.
Oh yeah,
was that season 2 or was that season 3? I could be remembering.
No, yeah, season 2 was the wedding. I think mainly season 2 is fan favorite because it introduced like 2 great characters with Discord and Queen Chrysalis, and it was just like there was a lot that happened in that season. So yeah, I can see why that would be like regarded as one of the best seasons. I still can't listen to the last song from the last 2 episodes. The one from after like they get married, Love Is in Bloom, I think it's called. I still can't listen to that song to this day.
Like too emotionally charged.
Yeah, there's something about that song that just like triggers something in me that like it's a very, very weird feeling of like nostalgia and like bittersweetness and all that. I don't know, like because back in the day, for some reason, people were expecting the show to die like right away. Like everybody was like, oh, it's only going to be 2 seasons long. It's only going to be 3 seasons long. It's I don't know. There was like this weird need to kill off the show for some reason.
I don't know. Yeah, it was that weird time, wasn't it? But like it lasted 10 years, which is crazy. Out 9 seasons, and it managed 100. Like, how many episodes was it?
200 and something. After like 210 or something like that.
Which is like most cartoons or what have you don't last more than like a season or 2 at the most. If you're
like nowadays, it lasts 3 seasons at most, and.
But like G4 was like lightning in the bottle. You ain't gonna get that again. I don't think. It's sort of it hit the right place at the right time.
Oh, it definitely did. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of people sticking around for G5, but it is going to pale in comparison to what G4 was. Like nowhere near the hype
in terms of impact.
Yeah,
anyway,
in terms of impact. Like you'll get a couple of new fans, you'll get a couple of old fans that'll come and give it a shot. But like the way that G4 worked, it's not going to happen again.
Yeah, it's so. Quite a lot of people have moved on from it, like and as well as artists as well. Like they've moved on to other things, which is totally fine. It's one of those things where a transitional period in people's lives. I guess like it's sort of it struck a chord with so many people at the time, and like it's sort of how big an impact it actually had on a lot of people, and myself included. Like it's sort of how many artists came about because of the show.
Dozens and hundreds, even
hundreds, like possibly thousands, and like musicians as well, who watched the show that were like, inspired to make their own content.
Like the burst of creativity that this show sparked was amazing. I don't think it was like anything anybody had ever seen before. Like the way it inspired people to do so many different things, it was just it was crazy. Like there was people making up like whole new basically seasons worth of episodes with like fan fictions. Like the music that came out of it, there's a lot of songs that came out of the Brony community that I still listen to this day, and like obviously a lot of artists like 2D and 3D artists that I still follow to this day because of MLP.
I'm trying like is it that Discord song? Is it that still hangs around? What's that song?
The one from Discord by originally by
is it
Euro
Mike the
Beat
Microphone?
No, that was the Living Tombstone. The Living Tombstone made the most popular,
Living Tombstone,
the most popular remix.
That's a weird one because that one is sort of still has a bit of a pulse because it's sort of bled into the Undertale fandom. It's weird. I've noticed it's sort of like people that the memes have crossed over.
It resurfaces every now and then, and like it's always a good bit of burst of nostalgia to like hear it.
It's still it's still like hanging around in the ether, but yeah, that's a whole nother topic in of itself, isn't it? It's pretty. I need to rewatch the show. I've got all the episodes on my hard drive somewhere, but I'll have to rewatch them again at some point. I might do. Just basically just talk about the episodes and stuff like that. It's. What would you say is your favourite episode then? What would you think off the top of your head?
Holy moly! Now that's a loaded
or episodes.
That's a loaded question. Favorite episode? I think I can't remember exactly. I want to say it was in season 3. I can't trying to like remember exactly. The one where they finally acknowledged Derpy was definitely like one of my favorite episodes, mainly for its impact on the community. Because, like, on the original airing, they actually referred to her as, like, Derpy, and she had, like, all the qualities that the fandom had come to.
I've still got that, I think, that original
airing.
I think I've still got that.
Yeah, like,
yeah.
It was heartbreaking to see that people actually got upset over it. Like, we're trying to be inclusive here. We love her for who she is, and then people just obviously distorted it and made it something ugly. I think that was really, like, heartbreaking to see.
It was a weird situation, wasn't it? But they did reinstate the character again later. I think they basically stopped referring to her, but they didn't. They left the eyes as they were. I think they did in later episodes, but I don't think she spoke again until episode 100. I think.
Yeah, for the longest time after that episode, she wouldn't show up because she usually always showed up like in the background. I think for like maybe a couple of episodes, I think like 2 or 3 episodes, they didn't include her in the background like at all. Then they eventually started phasing her back in until obviously we got episode 100 where she was like basically one of the protagonists of the episode, which was again super amazing to see that like nod to the community. Episode 100 is also like one of my favorites just because of the fan service.
Yeah, it is a fun one, that episode.
Yeah, and absolute top favorite for me, like if I had to absolutely point to an episode, it would have to be The Perfect Pair. That's like absolutely my top favorite episode. That's an episode that like makes me cry each and every single time that I look at it, for as weird as it sounds. Like seeing them finally talk about Applejack's parents, like it, and the song.
Oh yeah.
Pear Butter's song was just it was beautiful. I loved everything about that episode. It was just very it made me feel like they actually completed the series there, like actually finally giving us the lore, the background to Applejack's parents, which had been a mystery up until that point. Like actually getting to see them, like they could have very easily, I think, gone the whole series without like ever tackling that. The fact that they did was just amazing in my eyes. That is like for me top tier episode.
Yeah, definitely. That's another highlight. That was one of the near the end, wasn't it? I think it was. Was it season 8 or 9? I can't remember.
I believe it was season 8. Yeah, season 8. Like the fact that they left it towards the end, it was like wow, they're really starting to send off the series.
And they did like do a season 10 as such, like, but it was mainly just I think it was just the comics.
Yeah, they went the whole like season 10 route was just mainly comics, which I never got around to reading. There's a lot of like cool stuff in the comics from what I've seen. They tackle a lot of like different storylines that are interesting, like the one where Celestia's in love with like a different universe's Sombra, which I think is really cool. Sadly, most of the comic, I think none of it is canon whatsoever, except for like season 10. But yeah, that always seemed like kind of, I never understood. Obviously, on the corporate side, maybe it was just time to like refresh the show. But I'll never understand why they couldn't just commit to like giving it like 10 straight seasons.
Yeah. I think it was more a case of like, I think maybe they felt like maybe they went on a bit too long. I thought that let's wrap it up with season 9. I think, but 9 seasons is nothing to be
Oh
sneezed
no,
at. And like
not at all.
it was it had to come to an end eventually, but instead of like running itself into the ground. But yeah, like it's the characters are very fondly remembered, and there's a lot of great moments in there as well, which is like it's just one of those things. It's a cultural phenomenon, as like it's weird saying that, but it actually is how how its impact over the last 10 years or so still resonates in the internet's ether, and like how it became so popular with so many people as well.
Yeah, like of all different backgrounds of sorts of people you would never expect turned out to enjoy the show, which I think was like the best thing ever. Like you would see these people that like, there's no way somebody like this would be caught watching a show, and then no, they would turn out to be some of the biggest fans and like have a whole bunch of merch and all that. That was always like really crazy to me. All like these like tough looking dudes and be like, oh yeah, I love that show. It's amazing and all that.
So when did you start engaging with the fandom itself? Was it like halfway through the run, or was it a little bit later on you started actually engaging with the artwork and all the music and stuff like that? Was it pretty early on or later?
No, it was pretty early on. Like the first, I first saw My Little Pony back in like November of 2011. By probably I want to say like late December of that year, early January of 2012, I was writing fanfics. I started out writing fanfics. They were really cringy because I was only like 15 at the time. None of them are up anymore, so thankfully that's something that people will never get to see again. There is one fanfic that I left up, but after that I moved on to making My Little Pony videos, because at the time I was learning how to like use things like Sony Vegas and After Effects and all that. I moved on to video making, and that's pretty much where I stayed for the longest time. Up until like 2017 when I got into making actual like artwork of the ponies. So I've pretty much dipped my toes on a little bit of all the different types of MLP fan media. The only thing I never got around to making was music, because I know jack shit about music. But yeah, I pretty much like participated in the fandom from the very, very beginning of like the whole movement.
I think for me, so I didn't really participate in like the broader fandom of it, I guess, if you like, until like probably about halfway through its run. I guess like I started getting interested in the artwork probably around like 2015, 2016 and stuff like that, and it was a few years after that I started considering maybe making my own bits and pieces, and of course like commissioning people. But I never really participated in like the fandom in any major way until like probably near the end of its run. I think I'm a bit the opposite. In fact, so I missed all the major events that happened throughout the fandom and all the other bits and pieces. But I sort of skipped all that lot, I guess, which I wish I was kind of a part of in a way. But then again, it still had a massive impact on my life and how it led to me making my own work, and like where I am now, making artwork with Blender. So its impact is profound. I think that is the case for other people as well.
Yeah, I think it's something that's always going to stick around. Like if you joined anywhere inside the Brony fandom, like when the show was running, you're probably more likely to stick around with it, like to actually like engage with it, than people who have joined now that the show is over. Because I feel like they're very different types of bronies, like the ones that joined after the show that are more in it for like all the OC stuff and all that, like not really for the show itself. They just I guess sort of like the character design. And people who joined while the show was airing or like actually took the time to watch the show, it just hits very different on that level, to where like it can inspire you. I've never seen a show or like a piece of media inspire people to like create art like My Little Pony. It's crazy. Like I've been part of like different fandoms, and this one just always seemed to have something that incited people to be creative, to like give back to the community.
Yeah, that's I think that's the beauty of it. Like the giving back is like the crucial thing. I think a lot of people have like found that's one of the best things about being a part of the fandom, I guess, like giving back to people and being a part of the friendship.
Of course, being part of the friendship,
as the title would,
or maybe even leaving your mark in something.
As the title would suggest. Oh my goodness. What would I say is my last episode, just to, I guess, to wrap things up, I guess. Maybe, probably off the top of my head, I can't remember what it's called, but I think it was in season 2 or 3. I think it was where they go on a camping trip, and like Scootaloo's like gets all frightened and tries to like run away. She's seeing like these monsters in front of her, but then basically where Rainbow Dash is like her big sister, because you didn't know at the time that where her parents were, Scootaloo's parents were. So at the time she was like considered like an orphan.
Oh, yeah.
So it felt more poignant at the time, like where our Rainbow Dash like sort of saw herself and inserted herself into the role as a big sister. It was quite touching in a way. That one sort of stuck with me. That's one of my personal favourites, but there's a lot of good ones in there.
Yeah, I always enjoyed that relationship that they like gave Rainbow Dash and Scootaloo, like that whole big sister role. It was always nice to see them like interact and have those like sisterly moments, even though they weren't never like, they were just, I guess, acquaintances, because like there was nothing really linking them together outside of like maybe this the Cutie Mark Crusader. So it was always nice to see them interact, which is also one of my favorite episodes. It's the one with Rainbow Dash's parents, where Scootaloo does the report on her, and they go to like that's also one of my favorite episodes, because again you get that bond of like having Scootaloo be part of their family as well, because it was like well before they showed like you said, Scootaloo's parents or her aunts that are in that one episode. So it was like cool to see her be part of a family for once, like have that unison.
Yeah. I sort of like I didn't really like it when like the parents actually like did exist. I guess like it sort of retconned it a little bit. I kind of wish I would have preferred it maybe if they left it as a mystery, or didn't even actually say whether Scootaloo's parents were still alive or what happened to them. I sort of, the mystery of it itself added a bit of charm to it, I guess. But when they just appeared, though, they were kind of like dicks,
like that really took the mystique away from it. Like
it took the wind out of its sails, I guess, a little bit.
I disliked it because I knew, like, with the show being the way it is, I knew they weren't going to take Scootaloo away. So it just seemed like a really big non-issue, or like unnecessary drama, that they were like, oh, we're going to move away. It's like, no, you're not. I know for a fact you're not, but like the show being the show, it just seemed like really, really weird that they would choose to introduce their parents this way. Like, if they would have just stuck to, oh, they're finally back from their travels and all that, but like, why have it be that way and then still on top of it want her to move away? That just seems like really, really weird choice of a storyline to go with.
Yeah, and the other retcon I didn't like, AK Yearling, I think that was another one. I preferred it when like it was basically the AK Yearling was just basically Rainbow Dash, like how she saw herself as a hero, I guess.
Oh yeah.
It's sort of when it actually became like, because it was a Rainbow Dash palette swap. That was the joke, I guess. Like, because how like she like. But when AK Yearling like became real, like, oh, she's actually an actual separate character, it sort of, I don't know, it took that away from it a little bit, I guess. Or I'm nitpicking again, this is years ago now, but
that show messed me up because it kind of like implied in the lore that like maybe there's no such thing as just like fantasy books, like everything can happen, like every like science fiction or like fantasy book or adventure book like that is things that actually happened. Because like it was just the writer going on her adventures and telling of that story. It's like, okay, so does that imply that every single adventure book is also like just people telling their autobiographies and all that? It's really weird.
Yeah, but again, they did have fun with it, of course. Like with the where they're at, like the AK Yearling convention or whatever, and you can see the body
That-
pillow. You can tell they're taking stabs.
I
at
laughed
people.
so hard when they showed
Like
that scene. I'm like, that is a big.
oh, no.
That is just making fun of the community. That was a fun.
It's just like we know what you've done. This is our way of acknowledging what
we
you've
recognize your guys' sins.
done. We're just gonna put it in a kids show just as a subtle little nod for the people out there.
It's like wink, wink to all those BronyCon attendees and all that.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Say no more. Oh my goodness! I could discuss the show with you all day long, but I think maybe
too.
we'll leave that for another time. But yeah, as I say, because we've already ran over to 2 hours, but it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I think I probably will have you on another time, maybe on a separate podcast. We could actually talk about the show in a more detailed scenario. I will consider that. But thank you so much for coming on to the show. Anything you want to plug? You've got your Twitter, you've got your Derpy Brew. Anything else?
Not really. Those are the only two really big sites or places that I'm active on. Just if you don't follow me and you kind of like what I do, feel free to follow me. I'm starting to be a little bit more active, so hopefully you enjoy what's to come.
Are you currently taking commissions at the moment, or?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, just like for people who want to commission
if anybody's interested, I'm available pretty much all the time. I'm always happy to work on stuff. I do it more than anything because I like to make art that people want to see, and if they got an idea that I like, I'm more than down with it.
Awesome sauce. So all the links to Fox's stuff will be in the show notes. And of course, if you want to contact either of us directly, any questions, send us through on our Twitter. That's probably the best way to contact us and what have you. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone so much for listening. I don't know who's going to be on the next episode, but we'll just have to wait and see. I think I've got at least another guest in the lineup, but when that will be, I don't know yet. But thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for Fox for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And we'll get you on the show another time at some point, but we'll get that sorted. Thank you everyone for listening. See you guys next time.
See you later, dudes.